Yeah, no, I mean, I had my first piece of Bitcoin, I think it was like 2012 or 13. And so I've always played with it, the wallets, the storage. I lost some,
It's
forgot where
fun.
it was. It's fun. The transaction speed is incredible. So I've been able to buy some things online with it, and it's just so fast, so incredible. Also, not having a credit card processor, when you're a vendor, you realize how much of a pain that is.
Enormous pain.
How skewed it is in favor of the customer, sometimes just like not realistically or not even in a favorable way. You're at the hands really sometimes by processors like Stripe. I love Stripe, but sometimes if the processor wants to just turn you off for whatever reason, and we've seen this happen with, we were talking earlier about things like Patreon and the credit card companies, like all of this stuff can be held hostage.
They have enormous power.
Yeah.
And who gave them that power, right? So we talk about crypto, especially Bitcoin. It's right in the name of in the title of the white paper as peer-to-peer electronic cash. Peer-to-peer is a technical term that started with a form of networking called peer-to-peer networking. Perhaps you remember Napster and BitTorrent and all of those things. P2P or peer-to-peer encompasses the ethos of this entire movement. It's about decentralization. It's about them not having an intermediary in between you. And I like to call traditional payment systems peer to corporation to corporation to corporation to peer, where you didn't invite any of those three corporations into your transaction. They just injected themselves. And here's the worst thing. Politicians around the world are trying to gradually reduce the usefulness of cash until they can eradicate it completely. And this is driven by two things. One is a very, very cynical perspective that this helps, grease the wheels of these payment companies, and they pay and persuade politicians with lobbying that this is a good idea. And the other one is this very misguided idea that if you eradicate cash, you'll eradicate crime, which of course you won't, because people will substitute cash with something else. And also, if the only people who are allowed to be intermediaries are the large corporations, they will commit the crime. It's like if you want to rob a bank nowadays, the best way to do so is to have a banking license. Then you can rob the entire bank and or country with complete immunity or impunity. So it encourages this concentration of power, puts the intermediaries in a position where they can commit what I call mega crimes, where they impact millions of people, hence the metric system prefix mega, right?
Right.
So mega crimes is when you have 1 million victims. And guess what happens? If you rob one person and steal 20 pounds from them, you're going to jail and you're going to spend a long time there. If you rob 2 million people of their homes and mortgages, right? You're not going to jail. You're getting a 10 million bonus from the bank, and you're retiring in peace and quiet in the countryside. That's what happens. So mega crimes are much better to commit. Unfortunately, you need a banking license to do those, which is why it's a rarefied kind of level of crime that only a few can participate. Here's the thing. With the development of crypto, we have the opportunity to do peer-to-peer, where you can make a payment from a person to a person. And we're at a very dangerous crossroads in history, which is if we go to a future where digital cash is the only form of cash that exists, and I think we're heading in that direction very, very fast. I think within 20 years, people who grow up 20 years from now will never see cash unless they visit a museum. If we go to that future, digital cash, we're at a crossroads because we have to choose between two possibilities. One is digital cash that's run by corporations that act not only as intermediaries in all of our payments, but also act as deputized members of law enforcement for every government and or intelligence agency and or dictator who co-opts them to their means. And they have enormous power. That type of finance takes the worst of surveillance capitalism and the worst of surveillance state, merges them together in this fascist dystopia where every transaction you ever made tells something about your habits, your politics, your associations, your movement, your physical location. And on the one hand, all of this data gets collected and shared among all of the intelligence agencies and corporations, or leaked. And on the other hand, if the people in power choose to, they can decide to debank you overnight. They turn off the switch. Now imagine what happens if your bank account is shut down and cash doesn't exist. Well, you can't eat. You can't buy food. Done. You can't use transportation. You can't rent an apartment. They can literally destroy your life in a second. And if you think this is crazy, this is happening today in China. They have a system called Sesame. It's called a social credit score. And they use your social media postings to give everyone a score as to how well they toe the line of political correctness to the doctrine of the Communist Party. People who have a negative credit score on that system are denied access to public transportation. They're denied access to airlines, they're denied access to trains, they're denied access to jobs in the government, they're denied access to apartments to rent. They're doing that today. Now, today, those people have cash to go back on. What happens when there's no cash? It's a terrifying future. And then there's the alternative. And the alternative is a true peer-to-peer, or several, perhaps even thousands of alternative peer-to-peer digital internet-based currencies that do not belong or are not controlled by any state, any corporation, that are run by rules that are collaborative, that depend on the participation of all of the people who use them, and that give you complete freedom and privacy to transact.